Welcome to the Success Story Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Clary. On this podcast, I have candid interviews with execs, celebrities, politicians, and other notable figures, all who have achieved success through both wins and losses, to learn more about their life, their ideas, and their insights. I sit down with leaders and mentors and unpack their story to help pass those lessons on to others through both experiences and tactical strategy for business professionals, entrepreneurs, and everyone in between. Without further ado, another episode of the Success Story Podcast. Thanks again for joining me. I'm sitting down with Elizabeth Pipko, who is an author, model, extremely talented individual. She is a trained figure skater. She speaks 6 languages. She has written a book, and she's writing another book, which is going to be coming out August 25th. So she's had a very diverse career. She has built a name for herself in a variety of different campaigns, advocating for different things, both inside and outside of the political arena. So you may have heard of her, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me. I want to understand how you built out your career, where you came from, how somebody is so successful in so many different arenas, and just tell me your story.
Yeah, so from the very, very beginning. My parents came here from the Soviet Union. So I was raised just like a very happy, pro-American child who was just known that, my life is good because my parents literally gave up everything to come here. And it's like a pressure that I think kind of stayed with me since I was like 5 or 6 and able to even understand that. So sitting with my grandparents who basically raised me and hearing what they went through to come here so that their grandchildren, which they hadn't even, known at that point yet, would have this, American life. Just kind of like a pressure. So when you say, multidimensional, someone who does all these things, it seems cool, but it's like this anxiety that literally follows me around. That's you have to conquer everything that you touch and continue to do that through your life.
And that.
So I guess there's good and bad with that, but that's kind of why I've been touching all these different things and trying to take on these different opportunities.
So what was first?
So to start. Yeah, so to start from the very beginning, when I was 10 years old, I stepped onto the ice for the first time and fell in love with figure skating. And my parents, being the supportive, amazing parents that they are, we moved across the country to Florida so I could train in Florida with these really intense, amazing coaches who were the only real professional coaches that would take me on at that point because I really had been skating for a month. I gave up my whole life for that, my family, my friends, my health, everything I knew. I was homeschooled starting immediately. I was skating 8 hours a day. Really just hey, I'm going to the Olympics. The only thing I want. That was 10-year-old Elizabeth's dream. I spent 4 years training really, really hard, caught up with kids my age, which was amazing. And then I got injured really, really badly, quite a few times. I had a skate to the head. I broke my femur in half, literally cracked it along the entire middle from knee to hip. Broke my ankle, toes, literally everything you can imagine. And then kept coming back, which was great. And then at 15, I destroyed my ankle completely. Was told I would never skate again, as well as have issues walking, running for quite some time. So that was really bad. I spent almost 5 months, I think, in a cast, and then 7 years in intense physical therapy, just trying to come back and be a human again. In that time, we moved back to New York. I went back to school. I self-published actually my first 2 books of poetry when I was 17 and 19, I believe, which was really cool. I also got signed to Wilhelmina Models and started focusing all my skating energy in there and trying to succeed as a model. In the meantime, I dabbled in politics, like you said. I worked in 2016 in politics, and then since then I've continued on there. And then I'd say around the same time, 2015, 2016, I officially made my return to the ice, even though every doctor said I would never do it. And now I'm back training on the ice and waiting to see what happens with that, while also dabbling in the new book and the politics and everything else at the same time.
What is your focus right now? Because you're not competing, but I mean, you're very effective at so many different things. So what are your focuses? What are your passions that you're doubling down on? You have this new book. You're back on the ice figure skating. I'm not going to be able to provide much commentary on that because I don't know that world. But in terms of politics, advocacy, new book, what is your career? What does your career destination look like?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that. The answer is I have no idea, which I think is good because I'm 25 and I don't need to know what the hell I'm, doing for the rest of my life. Right now, I do have a political organization that focuses pretty heavily on I want to say, just like Jewish causes, it's political technically, and people see me that way, which is fine. But it's like a very pro-Israel cause, which is less political for me. Unfortunately, that's become political
Yeah.
nowadays. But it's more like just the value I was raised with. So I'm very pro-Israel. I spend a lot of my days literally stalking and fighting anti-Semitism. That's another focus of my organization. It's also slightly political, which is fine with me, though it's pretty like a touchy subject right now. And it's been hard for me since like getting into it, losing friends and family members and being attacked the way I have been.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of a part of what I am and what I do. I'm not pretending to be like, a person in Congress or a senator, whatever it is. I'm not pretending to be anything. I think since 2016, things have gotten crazy in politics. So my goal right now is to be able to advocate for the causes I stand for while also just being a normal person. Like, I don't think everyone has to be this like one-sided person who like strongly pro-right or pro-left or whatever it is. So I advocate for the causes that I stand for, that have been with me since I was a child. I started my own organization, which is half non-for-profit and also a super PAC. So I'm very proud of that at 25 years old, but it's also just a teeny tiny piece of who I am and what I do. I put my heart and soul into that and building that out. So now it kind of functions on its own, which is great. And I'm honored to be a part of it whenever I am, but it's just a little teeny piece, like I said, of what I do. So there's that. There's the pro-Israel stuff, which is separate from politics and also combined, because that's just the way life is now, but that's my heart and soul. I am training. No one really knows that. With the book, I'm kind of like, for the first time, telling people my story. I haven't talked about skating a lot because it really, I thought, would lead to the Olympics and ended so abruptly and like so, I don't want to say traumatically, but traumatically. Like, it was really rough for me, so I didn't talk about it. Now that I'm back on the ice, I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm back and I'm jumping and training and doing things I did not know I'd be doing. So I'm comfortable talking about that. So I'm kind of telling the world that with my book right now, as well as other things. So I'm training. Luckily, I can figure skate at like 5 in the morning, so I can be done by like 9 a.m. and take on the world with some other projects, which is good. There's that. There's the book, which I'm super proud of. It's kind of like a very pro-America, positive, just like one girl story of how she came to, where she is. It's not very one-sided. I'm not trying at 25 years old to tell you how to vote or what to do. I don't believe in that. I'm not that person. I'm just telling you why I believe in the things that I believe in. So I think it's like my whole life is like a weird advocacy mission in like different ways, and hopefully something pays and becomes like an actual career. Mm-hmm. But right now, it's just like wherever my heart takes me, I'm letting that take, the hours of my day every single day.
I think that the one thing, you hit on so many points, and there's so many things that I think are good lessons for people to learn from, whether or not it's, in the perseverance in figure skating, or even like a very sensible view to politics, and not, when you advocate for things, it doesn't always have to be so partisan. It doesn't have to be all right wing, all left wing. There can be people that have sensible views on different topics, depending on what the topic is. And the fact that you acknowledge that, and like that's sort of like where you're coming from as like a place of authenticity. I think, when I sort of look over the persona of yourself, it seems like you're just building out a strong brand based on what you actually care about, which is, I think, very important. You're marketing yourself authentically. And I think that that's something that you don't see a lot of in politics, unfortunately. I think that that's something that we could use a little bit more of. And it seems like everything that you're doing is sort of falling in line with that strong sense of personal self. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. That's sort of what I'm seeing as you start going through all these different things.
Yeah, no, that was very well put. Better than I could have said it.
I just talk for a living, so it's the words come easier than when you do a one-off interview. But that's really what I see, to be quite honest. So what's let's speak about some of the accomplishments. So the figure skating speaks for itself. You did a ton of training. You had an accident. Now you're back on the ice, and that's something you're constantly striving for. You're persevering. And normally I would just ask something like, how do you keep going? How do you get back on the ice? But I think that a lot of the reasons why you can get back on the ice are the same reasons why you're able to have perhaps unpopular political views on some things that, you mentioned you lost some friends and family members, which is always, it's very sad when politics causes that, of course, which is just stupid, to be quite honest, but it is what it is. People are very, adamant about their politics. And, right now is like at an all-time high in terms of advocacy for what people believe in. I see it on social all the time, and I should probably.
Oh, it's bad. Yeah.
But let's, I want to understand like what drives you. But first, I just want to understand a little bit more about the causes you support and how you built up. You mentioned something you said you were very proud of. I apologize. I didn't get the name or what the actual movement was, but you said you built it up. It was a What was that again? The PAC?
So it's called the Exodus Movement.
And what is that exactly?
It's a non-for-profit with like a super PAC branch.
Okay.
Basically, when I got into politics, originally, like I had a mission, I worked on a campaign, and then I was just kind of like in that world and didn't know what to do. And like you said, I'm not like very crazy right wing, left wing. I don't believe in any of that. I just believe in being my own person. And there was a lot of causes that I stand for, but I never wanted to be like this girl who worked for the Republican or Democratic Party. Like that was never going to be it. And the one thing that stuck with me since I was little was like advocacy for Israel, fighting anti-Semitism, like all the things that come with, a girl who was in an Orthodox Jewish school from like 2 years old to like 13. So I started a group which basically was advocating for Jewish people. I don't think Jewish people were taken seriously in politics enough. I don't know if you know this. I believe that donations in America, like 50% of donations come from Jews, like combined, which is terrifying that they're 2% of the population, but like that involves financially, but aren't really taken seriously when it comes to politicians asking them what they actually care about and what they stand for. Like it's like the Jewish vote was just kind of taken for granted. I didn't like that. I didn't stand for that. And I thought that they deserve better. So I started my own group, basically advocating for Jewish causes like Israel. 97% of American Jews are Zionists. Like they support Israel, despite what you see on social media. That's just the way it is. And I don't think there was enough coming to them, enough information coming to them from different politicians on what they were going to do for Israel. It was a lot that was like sugar-coated by the media based on what they thought they could tell people in order to get them to vote the way they wanted. And I just don't believe in that. I think American Jews deserve to know where politicians stand on different issues that they care about and to make like a real decision, a genuine decision on their part. Whether it's the same as mine or different, that's fine. But they should be treated as human beings and not just as a vote that they can check off Democrat because that's the way they've always voted. So I didn't believe in that. So the group did start out super political, like I said, but it's very focused on like pro-Zionist, pro-Israel advocacy, which is super important to me, as well as fighting anti-Semitism, which ironically at the same time and super unfortunately just like spiked in America and around the world at the same time that I got into this. So very focused on fighting anti-Semitism on both sides of the aisle, by the way. I don't care if you're a liberal or Republican. I don't care what you stand for. If you're an anti-Semite, we will call you out and we will tell people not to vote for you, not to support you, and why this is coming out and from where. So fighting anti-Semitism, supporting Israel, and also there is that little part that is very political. But I'm proud because it's a real organization. I'm 25 and I'm not just, advocating on social media like a lot of people are. I wanted a real organization so people would feel comfortable giving, donating money or using our resources, whatever it is, but a real organization that I could leave my mark on and then maybe give off to someone else and move on, but just something real that I could build while I was in politics, but I have no idea how long that would last,
And how did somebody make that move? Such an incredibly impactful move, like just to start an organization like this, as opposed to just be like an SJW and try and be the loudest person on Twitter, because that doesn't do shit for anybody. So one thing I'm a huge advocate of, I don't really care what you believe in, but do something about it and don't just yell on social media. It doesn't really matter what you believe in. You can believe in, the sky's purple, but just do something to prove it out or to support that cause in real life. So how did you make that jump from just social that I'm sure most people your age, that's really, this is a huge generalization, but I don't feel guilty saying it because it's very accurate. A lot of people are just SJWs.
That's literally it. I would sit at home and be like upset at that exact, like that was a speech that was running through my head. And it was not just like young kids, by the way, like in politics, that's everyone. Like they want to see what they can like put their name on and get away with without actually doing anything. Like older, 50, 60, or like real people that have been in politics for generations, not just people my age. So I thought it was my age and like, that's one thing, but like it's inexcusable when you're someone who's been in politics for like 40, 50 years claiming to have had, different effects on different people and elections or whatever it is, really just sticking your name on things like people do in politics for years. And I didn't want to be that person. And I thought even the people that disagreed with me, which there are many, would probably at least respect the fact that I stood for, what I believed in and I did something about it. And I tried to not even change your vote, but like, reach out to people and do something with it and not just sit at home posting on Twitter. I also get a lot of attacks on Twitter and I don't want to be that person. So I'm better at staying off of social media and doing real things and not, crying over like negative comments. So this was better for me as well.
And what were the first steps that you actually took to do something? So I'm just thinking for people that are listening, if they really want to start, it seems like a monumental task to actually do something and to make an impact. So what were the steps that you took to actually, walk us through how to start something like this?
Yeah, so it's actually a crazy story and I won't air out all of it on here because it's politics and it's dirty, but I was like dragged into someone else's idea for a movement. And when I saw, like you just said, how much was not actually being done and which was claimed to, be in the works for the media and whatever it is and wasn't actually happening, I felt extremely uncomfortable being a part of it, as well as just like in danger of literally breaking the law. Like I felt uncomfortable being a part of something when I didn't know everything that was happening behind the scenes. Like I was in the front or whatever it is, it like was blasted all over the media, but nothing that I knew about was actually getting done. Like I had no idea what was going on in the back, and I just didn't want to be that person that didn't know what was going on and didn't know what they were actually advocating for, didn't know what was set up behind them to get something done. I didn't want to be the face of something when I didn't know what was going on. And it kind of blew up out of nowhere, this like idea about Jews and how they vote and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I can't have the media blow up over something and I don't, have full control of what it is. So that's when I reached out to people and looked at different political consulting groups and met with people and decided I had to make a real organization and see what was going on. Before I lived this like weird fake life, like you mentioned, of just tweeting and saying things and not really getting things done. Like I didn't want to be that person. And you'll be shocked at how few people do that. So when you look into it and you want to get it done, you can very easily get it done. And you'll feel a lot more accomplished than tweeting something and, hoping it gets retweeted by whatever number of people.
Yeah, well, it's this like echo chamber. I find like social media is this echo chamber of people with similar ideas to you, which just propagates your own idea without actually sort of widening your scope or your view. And I think it's like a very toxic environment. I think that it's funny. There's different ways to look at this, but I think the social media algorithms, purposefully or not, are very damaging to communication, to conversation, to ideas, and expanding the human condition and just sort of reaching across the aisle, so to speak, just because I know that algorithms favor like content. And when you have this like social media echo chamber of like content, you always feel like what you're saying is valid because it's being reinforced by people with similar views, which I think is the most dangerous thing, because that reinforcement is going to drive you to sort of put your feet down, like double down on what you believe in, regardless of whether or not it's logical or it makes. I see some crazy shit on Twitter that like, we're not talking politics. Like
it's really crazy. Yeah.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts what you can build a community around if you're not careful. And if, I think that that's something that there's so many issues with social media, like mental health issues, the need to get information instantaneously. These are all so many issues that we see with social, but I think like politics is further propagated by social. But okay, so let's, there's a lot of things that you've built out, and obviously there's some politics involved in what you were building out with the super PAC, but that's not all of it is. And that's not all what it is. Obviously, you wanted to sort of build something you're proud of and that you believe in. But you also, when I'm reading sort of the summary for your book, so the book is called Finding My Place. That's the book that's coming out August 25th, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it speaks about, okay, so now we got figure skating done, and you're still doing that, the super PAC. Now, what are it mentions like some of the lessons and moments that would dictate your future. I'm curious what some of those are.
Yeah, so you kind of hit on this a tiny bit with like what we're talking about with social media. People are very, very quick to like follow the crowd and like be sheep because it's just the easier thing to do. I was attacked for, working in politics, but I was attacked as a little kid for like choosing skating over like doing drugs and hanging out with boys. Like it's always been that way. So it was, like you said, easier for me when that happened because I literally had to deal with all that garbage my entire childhood. So for me, the book is about, like, people can say it's political, whatever they want. That's maybe 3 chapters out of 18. Like, it's about being your own person. It's so much more serious than politics because whatever's going on right now, whatever people are advocating for, it's going to change in the next year. No one knows what's going to happen. No one knows why it happened in the first place. No one knows how long it's going to last. And the only thing that can last is like who you are as a person and what you genuinely believe in, no matter who's around you. So I think the whole book really is called Finding My Place. It's about how I had to go through life and never really found my place, and whether that was skating and not fitting in there because of how I started and how I trained and everything else. Judaism, like I'm judged on both sides of the aisle. So I'm not Orthodox enough, or I'm too Orthodox, whatever it is, and I'm very involved in that world now with politics. People really want to tell other people how to, believe in their own faith, which is crazy. So there, in modeling, like I always felt like I didn't belong, even though I had like a real career at Wilhelmina, which was really exciting. In politics, I certainly feel like I don't belong. I'm sure I will feel this again in the future. Just literally finding your place through life and going on without actually knowing, where you are, but knowing who you are, I think is super important. And I think it's a really important book for right now, if I can say so myself, because it's just very genuine. I don't want anyone to read the book thinking it's political, because it's not. It's a book telling you why I chose what I chose and encouraging you to choose, what you genuinely believe in yourself. Not telling you I would ever judge you for that, just telling you that I would judge you if you chose what someone else chose for you and not what you really feel in your heart, because life is way too complicated for that. And really just following what you feel in your heart, following what you believe in, something that I've done since I was, 3 or 4 years old, and hoping that, people read the book and want to do that moving forward themselves.
How do you what is one lesson that you would tell someone who feels as though their opinions don't go with the grain and they have opinions that they and it's just something as simple as choosing the right sport or choosing an activity when you're young, or it could be doubling down on your faith or religion, or it could be choosing a political arena to sort of align with. How do you maintain that positive mental attitude? What's your trick for not caving? Or is there no trick? Maybe it is very hard for you. Maybe there have been moments of like depression and you're second guessing yourself. So what is your formula?
Yeah, so definitely been moments of depression. It's been rough, but I don't think it was directly related to like being my own person and that, just like injuries and things in between. I think, like you said, there might not be a formula. When I was little, I was a very different person than now. I really don't know why. Maybe it's like from my parents and grandparents and what they went through and just like what they instilled in me without me even really noticing. But I had no problem being my own person. Like I thought it was the coolest thing in the world that girls were talking about. I don't know, smoking weed or whatever it was. And I was like, I have no interest in that. Never going to do it. Still haven't done it. Like I loved being that person at 13, 14, 15, whatever it was. Still that person. But it was a lot easier when you're little. I think people don't realize how much easier it is, and you think that you're like, going with the crowd in high school and doing stupid things, but you'll be different when you're an adult. And it's not like that. It's a lot easier to say no to like drugs or drinking or whatever it is at 15 than it is to, make real world decision as, a real grown up in the world. So that's when it started for me. And I thank God for that, because after my injuries and with the anxiety and depression and everything that came from that, I think I became, if I can even say it, like a weaker person. Like I'm not the person I was when I was little before I went through all the garbage of the last, 10 years or whatever. So I'm proud of that person, and that kind of stays with me through life. Like I literally think, what would 13-year-old Liz do? Because she was way cooler than 25-year-old Liz, honestly. But I think it's also just, if you convince yourself that it's cool, then you'll want to do it. Like I don't know if there's like a formula. I don't know if I can tell myself like, hey, I guarantee you this will succeed because no one else is doing it. Like that will never click in my brain. But what will click is saying, hey, 10 out of 12 people are doing that. You want to be the two that's doing this, because they're never going to make it because they're doing what everyone else is doing. Like, there's a reason they're doing it, and it's because it's easier. And if you choose the harder path, it'll make you a stronger person, or at least a different person from who they are. Like you're not guaranteed to succeed, but you're guaranteed to get a different lesson than any of them, are ever going to get, because they're doing what everyone else is doing. There's also a reason they're doing it, and that's because it's easier. Doing what's easier is never going to help you in life, ever. So I think it's more just like rationalizing it with yourself and telling yourself, why do you want to do this? And why do so many people not want to? Why do so many people want to do that? Or why do they make fun of you for it? And realizing that it might actually be cool to be different, and that everyone that's ever made it in life was probably super bullied, super different growing up, and realized only like 30, 40, 50 years too late that was actually the right way to live their lives.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. To be quite honest, that's 100%, in my opinion, at least, how you have to do it. I think it also helps if you have like a really strong support system. But if, for example, say some people they don't have the support system. I know people that, because of their, God forbid, their political views, like they've had fights with their family, their, this aunt, this whatever cousin, the brother, sister doesn't speak to them. It's just horrible. But I think that reinforcing the why and reinforcing that like internal fire as to why you even started down this path.
Exactly.
And then I love what you've said about, I love the two things you said, and I just want to highlight them. The first one being, if everyone's doing it, first of all, it definitely doesn't mean it's right. And second of all, you can be sure that even if you choose a different path than everyone else, even if your different path is different, you can always go back and learn and default to the other way.
They will always be there. Exactly.
It's always there. I love that. And then the other thing you mentioned is most successful people didn't fall in line with what's normal. You hear this from, I know you're speaking, in your personal experience, your sports, politics, whatever. You hear this from entrepreneurs, like all these anybody who who is highly successful, who their name, guaranteed they were, if you saw them before they were successful, you would have been like, this one's a little bit weird. because
Yeah.
it takes a little bit weird. It takes a little bit crazy
Yeah.
to
And
be
even if you
successful.
didn't meet them and think that yourself, guaranteed people would tell you, hey, don't go to him. He's super weird. People want to bring you down the minute that they see something different about you, even if it's not weird. To them, like if they don't understand it, they hate it. Like that's just the way it is. And they will always tear you down. Even once you make it, they'll tear you down even more because people don't like that. Like people are uncomfortable by other people who like choose to be different.
Yeah, very well said. I have a couple other like just professional insight questions that I like to ask. But before that, I just wanted to sort of close up, pardon the pun, like close a chapter on the book, and just ask: is there anything that I didn't ask about the book that you wanted to chat about?
No, I mean I think it's basically what I said. Very like not strictly political at all. Very pro-America. Just very open and honest. But it's also when I came like out in the public world in politics mostly. Like I was known a bit in modeling, but not like this at all because politics is crazy right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people just chose to like tell my story for me, like where there were articles lying about who I was and like just garbage, nasty things from the other side, as well as just people like choosing to tell who I am, why I believe in what I believe in, like all these crazy things. And I'm not saying this book's going to be a bestseller, though I hope it is. But I think it was important for me, and that's another reason I tell people be who you are. It's important for me. I'm finally getting to tell my story. So it might be, 15 years later than little 10-year-old Liz who dealt with some bullying, but I'm getting to tell why I am where I am, why I made every decision I made. Some people are really going to dislike it on both sides, politically, on all sides, and skating and this and that, because they're going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. But I'm finally getting to tell my story. And if you choose to, go your own way, you will also have your own story. Whereas if you choose to go with everyone else, the story won't be that interesting at 25, 35, 45. But I have a lot of, weird things to share and cool things I hope to share and sad things to share. And hopefully people will read it and think, oh, I can do my own thing as well. And it might not always work out, because it definitely didn't. But at least it'll leave me to be my own person, and that's what matters.
Your story actually reminds me, on this show, I interviewed Anthony Scaramucci, and he's also the guy who came from not politics and was put into politics and just dealt with the absolute shit show that was politics. And he's like,
understatement, yeah.
And serious. And he was like, like Scott, he's like, imagine, I can't remember the quote exactly, but it was like, imagine like the worst person in Wall Street in business and finance. That's like the person you want to be friends with in Washington. Oh, yeah. And it's just nuts because he was, he's not young. Like you're relatively, in 25.
Right. No, he's been like, he's a real person.
He's like, multimillionaire, like huge with his venture capital firm, like very highly successful, accomplished individual, had a name for himself, a huge name for himself just in like the Wall Street finance investment world. And he went into politics and he's like, it was just a nightmare. So, I think you have to be like a different kind of person to be okay with that.
I can't even begin. Like it will chew you up and spit you out. And like, I always thought politics was cool. Like I watched all the movies and I was like in like the mock elections in school. Like I loved it. And I was like, oh, it's evil. Like people are evil. People are cool. Like it's like a James Bond movie. It's 10 billion trillion times worse. Like I read about it a bit in the book, but you can't even begin. Like no part of it will make you feel good when you close your eyes at night. Like you will be like, I can't believe I'm a part of this. It is the worst thing. Just awful, god awful, and it gets worse by the day. And it's just terrifying how many people, young people, when I was little, this wasn't happening. Young people, 11, 12 years old, especially like you said, social media, feel like they're involved in like advocating for something and are just ruining their minds and their lives and depressing themselves and everything else because they feel like there's like this mission out there for them because politics has just taken over everyone's hearts and minds and everything else. And it's terrifying and it's awful. And I pray that it goes back to normal very soon.
Yeah, I think because of all the issues that are on a global scale, like COVID, George Floyd, social unrest, it's just like doubling down on already stressed people. And then unemployment and economy. Like there's so many things that, say what you want about Trump, but he is having one hell of a term. Like this is not a normal time for
it's not
anybody.
Smooth sailing. No,
this is an absolute shit show for anybody that was in office. And I think that I don't want to compare it to other horrible global events, but this is in my lifetime, in your lifetime. This is probably the worst it's been in a while.
My kids are going to ask me about 9/11 and they're going to ask me about coronavirus. Like I think that's, or at least 2020 as a whole.
I think 2020 as a whole. I think coronavirus is like the how it started, and it all just went down.
Beginning, and it's only July, so just wait.
God, don't remind me. Oh my God. I just like I'm in Toronto, so I think we just allowed like not in Toronto. I'm Canadian, but not in Toronto. But outside of Toronto in Ontario, we don't have it half as bad as what's going on in the States right now in
Right.
terms of daily cases. But we just were allowed to go sit on patios like in the past month, which was nice. But it's just
Patios
so
are nice.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
very
it's
difficult.
brutal.
And the
Mhm.
thing is that you don't see the end in sight, right? That's really the issue. Like you're just like, when
No,
is I'm complaining
right,
about patios, but like realistically, like, thank God I still have work. I'm very
right,
blessed compared to some people who are not so fortunate, but it's still like for everybody, when's it going to end? Like when will the
yeah,
economy open back up? When can I used to live in New York and LA. Like I used to go down to New York like once a month for work. And
yeah,
now it's just like it's all closed up. It's very weird.
right.
I don't know.
And it's like a weird fear of like this could
Yeah.
last 6 months, or this like New York, like maybe the virus ends,
Yeah.
like hopefully, but New York could still be New York the way it is right now for the next 2 3 years. We might not
Yeah.
see like Broadway and Times Square like in the next
Yeah.
2 3 years, which
Just
is
like simple
like
things.
it sounds small, but it's really scary. It's like the American spirit is like in that block, and it could just be gone.
Yeah.
And that it's a rough time, honestly.
Um, let's we can go into the negative and all that stuff. Probably we could talk about that forever, but let's focus on some more positive, some things that you've learned from your career. So I guess one question I like to ask is, what is something the biggest area of opportunity in politics and advocacy? What's a topic that you're interested or you're trying to learn about right now?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, I think every topic right now, I mean, it's out there, but they're all kind of overwhelmed with advocates on like very far ends of both, left, right, the aisle. And it's very hard to be not only your own person, but it's very hard to even research because you talk to individuals or whatever it is, kind of, you can find out based on who they voted for, how they feel about the current administration, what they're going to tell you.
Mhm.
Like, no one wants to be honest anymore and speak as an individual. They speak as like a part of this like left wing or right wing army. And that's something that I never want to be a part of. I don't believe in it. People on the right that support me are going to watch this and hate me for saying it, but I don't like it. I just want to be my own person. Like, I don't want to do that. So it's really hard right now to research and be a part of these things. Like, for example, after George Floyd was murdered, it was a really rough time. I mean, in American history, that's going to go down as a rough time, but it was really hard as, individuals to live through that. Of course, his family and everyone suffered extremely, but we all were, in our own way, a part of it. Like, America's facing a
Mhm.
serious issue. And I decided to like, call that out on social media and just say, hey, racism is awful. And it's genuinely like heartbreaking that a black child is going to have to watch that video one day because it's plastered on social media forever. And it's terrifying and it should not happen in America, the greatest country in the world that my parents fled to avoid these things. So I said that, and people on both sides of the aisle decided to call me either, a racist who never cared about black people in the first place, or those on the right who said that I'm the reason that, America's going to fall through the cracks and die because I choose to call out racism, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
it's like, I can't even stand up against racism as like a normal American who genuinely was heartbroken by that video. Like, I think 99.9% of people were. I can't even do that anymore. Like, that should be the most basic American, value and tradition. It's
Yeah.
like we don't stand for people being treated badly in our country by anybody. And you can't even do that anymore because people will tell you, you said it wrong, you did it wrong, you can't say that, we're on the right, you don't say that, we're on the left, you don't say that. And it was really scary. Like, I turned social media off for 2 days, and it was genuinely less about like the nasty comments to me and more about like, where the hell are we? Like, my
Yeah.
parents, my entire childhood were like, you were in the greatest land of all time. You can do anything. You can stand up against anyone. You can just believe in anything you want. And now I'm just a 25-year-old, I think I was still 24 then, but a 24, 25-year-old girl who's like, hey, racism is bad. Like, breaks my heart that this is out there. I have to say something because it hurts me as someone who fights against anti-Semitism. I will always fight against racism and hatred of any kind. And I had to say something because it felt it in my soul. Like, I had to say something. And it's like, if you get attacked for like a few sentences calling out racism, like, what can you even stand for anymore
Yeah.
right now? Like, it's so hard out there, and it's sad because it's not the country that we are at all. It's not the country my parents came to, 40 years ago. And it's not the country that I want to raise kids in. I want them to be able to stand against hatred and stand for whatever they believe in, even if people, disagree. And like you said, it's social media too. Like, people just feel the need to call people out, tear them down no matter what they say. And it's bringing us down like as a whole so much. And I don't know how like people are going to look back on this time because it's really scary. Like, we can't come together to call out racism, to call out anti-Semitism, like simple things that the American people have always done, and we can't do it right now because we can't get on the same page on the most basic like human values, and it's
Yeah.
so scary.
Now, that was a very, very heavy answer, but I appreciate it because
Yeah,
it's
I didn't
very
expect it either.
but no, it was good. And it's very real. But Um, for yourself, so let's stay out of the advocacy and like topics, because like you mentioned, it's very hard to dive into something now because of the environment. Um, so what for yourself, what else do you want to do in your career? Is there skating, advocacy, writing? What else is next for you? Is there anything that you have planned?
So many things. My head is like, my wheels are always turning because I'm crazy and need to accomplish everything. I would love to keep skating and see what happens. I mean, to make like an actual comeback to competition after everything would be just the greatest feeling in the entire world, and be like a victory that I could take with me through my life. Because I mean, I had really the most amazing childhood, and that injury and like the I'd say 6, 7 years that followed, emotionally, like physically, mentally, were like that's the hardest time of my life. Like I dealt with like suicidal attempts and thoughts at like 16, 17. Literally couldn't walk upstairs for 2 years after getting my cast off. Like getting back on the ice was traumatizing, and I just literally cried every single day from pain. I still cry from pain sometimes because my ankle just clenches up and stops working. It was really, really, really hard. So if I could come back on the ice, not only for myself, but anyone else that ever gets injured or just has a setback of any kind, like that would be amazing. So I'm really working on that. We'll see what happens with skating. Um, I think the advocacy thing will stay with me through life. Like the things that I believe in, I will never stop, like advocating for those things. But also, I think it's about opening people's minds, less about telling them, hey, this is what I believe, you should too. It's more, I think, for me, like encouraging conversation. Like I think people need to learn or relearn how to have conversation about things that matter to them. So it's less about me explaining to people why I believe in what I believe in. I think that's second. And like first off, it's just explaining to people that it's okay to have the conversations about these different issues that we believe in. That's really important to me. I think that's what America stands for, and that's something that I will always advocate for. I would love to go back to modeling. I was at Wilhelmina, which is a big agency, for like 3 years. Different agency, went back and forth, did a bunch of things. I did like a positivity um, campaign a while ago, like a non-Photoshop campaign, which went viral. That was really cool. Just like whatever I can do, it's every little girl's dream to model, and I loved every minute of it. That would be cool to be able to do that again. I'd love to keep writing. During like when COVID started, and I knew we'd be locked up for quite a bit of time, I took an online, really long, like a, I don't say it wasn't like official culinary school, but like a culinary certification course that I spent like 8 hours a day on, and I got my certification, so that was really cool. So I'd love to do a cookbook after this book. That's another dream of mine. Probably a kosher cookbook, because I became kosher at 14, and like are going more, and my family's going slowly more and more Orthodox, like as the years go on. So I'd love to like do a kosher cookbook and encourage other young Jews keep kosher, see how easy it is. Put my love of cooking into a book. That would be cool. I don't really know, just all the things I mentioned and 100 more, hopefully.
Good. Good. No, that's good. I was just wondering if there's any projects, but it just seems like you're always like keeping your options open, and just
Yeah.
you just go in and just kill it with whatever you do. So like good. Good. That's very admirable. It's hard for people to sort of take
Thank you.
even one thing on and do well at it, let alone several things. So I think it's like a personality trait. It's definitely
Yeah.
that internal drive. Where do you go to learn or to stay on top? Is it, books, mentors, podcasts that you can recommend that people should go check out?
Yeah, I'm really, really lucky that when I go somewhere, I go to my dad. He's the smartest person in the world, and I go to him for advice on everything, to look over like op-eds that I write. Like he's my editor and my mentor and my advisor, and like he's just smartest and kindest human alive. So he's my person. So I go to him for everything. So I'm very lucky with that. I would say in general, watch out for everything on the internet, like you said. Like you never know. But I like to listen to podcasts a lot, and I like to go back and forth between those that are like known on one side of the aisle and those are known on the other, because you'll hear the same topics being talked about in very different ways, and it's a good way to like form your opinion, because A, I'd like to know what other people are saying even when I don't agree with them. That's super important. And B, it'll help shape you. Like when I was little, I thought that I was. I remember saying that I'm a Republican at like 11 or 12 years old, and my parents were like, "You're 12. Take it easy." And it's true. Like you will evolve over time. So there's no reason I meet a lot of people who are like 16, 17 who tell me like they look up to me, or they're very strong political Republican, whatever they want to be. More people on the other side who attack me, like same thing. And it's like you're a teenager, or your 20s, 30s, whatever. Like you're going to evolve, you're going to meet different people, go through different experiences, and your mind, like it could open up, it could change, you never know. So I would just say listening to everyone that you can listen to that is kind in their approach, and obviously keeps the same values, morals, ethics that you support. But I would listen to everyone, because it doesn't make any sense to keep yourself on one side, because it's only going to shape you for talking to those people. And that's not what you want. Like, we're not going to grow as individuals by only talking to those that agree with us. That's just silly. So I think that's most important. Listen to podcasts, the news, whatever it is, both sides, because you will learn. Maybe you'll learn that you're right, 100% right, and you'll only like grow stronger in your own opinions. That's important too. But you can't do that by only listening to those that agree with you.
It's a good answer. You know, I wanted to. There was an example. I can't remember his name. 1 second. It's the he's famous. But it's the black guy who started a relationship with one of like the leaders in the Ku Klux Klan, and that whole story just blows my mind, and it just makes me think like you want an extreme example of how somebody can change over time. That whole story, and you know, it's so bad that I'm blanking on it now. Geez, what's
But
that
it's a good
guy's?
opportunity for people to Google and learn.
Yeah, no, it's so
There you
long
go.
story short, and I'm gonna be, you know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in so much trouble forgetting the name because this guy is actually relatively famous. Anyways, long story short, he was just doing interviews with people in this black guy was doing interviews with people in the Ku
Right.
Klux Klan because he wanted to understand why they could hate. And he interviewed somebody who was like very, very, very high up in the organization. And you know, he just went out on a limb and did an interview with them, asked some questions, wrote an hour. You know, they finished the interview, and then you know, he said, keep in touch. The Ku Klux guy said, keep in touch. So he did. And he started inviting him over to his house, even though this guy was like a leader of this like very, very
Yeah.
right wing racist organization. He kept in touch with this black, you know, journalist, or I think he was writing a book actually on the Ku Klux Klan, this black guy. And I'm gonna get the names. I'm gonna drop the book in the links for this. It's a great story as well. I'll get your book as well in the links for this. But
Don't
long story
worry.
short, like 10
This
years
is more
later or something
important.
like that, this guy, the leader in the Ku Klux Klan, built such a relationship with this guy
Right.
that he eventually left the Ku Klux Klan, and he went on, and in his like his speech of him like retiring from, I don't know how you leave. He was like, basically, this black guy has given me more respect than you all you white people have.
Right.
And this is like a total aside from you know, your story, but I just thought it was I just saw it on Goldcast last night. That's why it's so relevant. And it was just such a like an impactful story about how like the total opposite end of the spectrum, if you open yourself up to learning, like the things that can happen and the person you can become, it's very incredible. It's just like it's
Right.
just total 180 from where this guy was originally.
Right. Yeah. If you want to stay in your circle, you can post on social media and get your
Yeah.
likes for your opinion and call it a day. If you actually genuinely want to change the world,
Yeah.
you're not going to do that around people that already agree with you. Like, that's
Yeah.
not going to change anything. You have to reach across to something, you know, someone else.
Who are the 3 most influential people in your life? And you can say family members too. It's okay. Most people say some
I was
form of
going to say,
that.
people say family. I mean, I have a husband, a brother, and 2 parents, so like 4. I'd
That's
say a few
1.
people.
That's
Is that 1? Okay, that's
Yeah.
perfect. I don't have a lot of friends, so that's actually easy. I'd say honestly, I'm very lucky, like you said, support system wise. Like, my parents are the greatest people in the world. My brother is my best friend. My husband is the kind of smartest. I mean, just perfect team. Like, very, very lucky with everyone around me. Genuinely, like the close knit family. I'm beyond blessed. So I have them. I'd say I'm very lucky with grandparents also. My grandfather on my dad's side passed away before I was born. My grandfather on my mom's side, who was very close with me, passed away like 2 years ago. I had like a step grandfather pass away a year before that. I had like an adopted grandfather. That story's in the book, very complicated as well, but he passed away like a year before both of them. So my grandmothers that are still alive, very influential, just because that's like a legacy that I am honored to be a part of. Like, that's the pressure that I take with me when I want to conquer all these things. It's like looking at my grandmothers who, you know, may not be around, you know, won't be around forever. Like, this is about like continuing their legacy, my grandfather's legacy, things that they risked everything for to come to America. Like, so that grandchildren one day would have this legacy. So it's like a pressure on my shoulders, because they're all amazing, just to continue on what they started. So I don't know if it's like, I don't come to them with every advice, you know, question, whatever it is, because I don't like to bother them with, you know, politics and stupid 20-year-old stuff. But it's like that's the pressure that's on me 24/7. So it does guide me. So I'd say that. And then I don't even know. Like, I look at all different athletes and politicians and people all the time. I'll watch like random. This is also, I say this in the book, I think. I watch like random YouTube videos for like America's Got Talent auditions, like all these things, because like you want to open your mind and see people out there. There's so many stories. Like, I hope that my skating story inspires someone. There's so many stories in the world and so many freaking incredible people. And if you open your mind, whether you agree with them politically or like, it doesn't matter. If they're from a different university, if they speak a different language, there are so many incredible people in our world doing the most, beautiful things, like the toughest things. If you open your mind and just try to look at, don't look for negative news articles on people you don't like. Look for beautiful stories from across the world of people doing things that you could never imagine a human being doing, and seeing them getting it done. That will also lead you through the hard times, the good times. When you're down, you'll know that that's going on somewhere at the same time. When you're up, you'll be happy because that's going on. Like, it guides you through life, because we all feel like we're in a little cluster all the time. But the world is gigantic and full of amazing and evil and beautiful and special and different people. And when you know what's out there, I think it lifts you up in a way that you wouldn't really imagine, because you know that you're special and you're lucky to be in the world right now, as crazy as it is, at the same time as all these, amazingly different people.
Very good answer. And what would be the best day of your life and the worst day of your life, and why?
Oh Lord, the worst day of my life, when my adopted grandfather passed away. It was like, I've lost like a great grandmother before, and like great aunts, uncle. Like, I lost people, but this was like my favorite person in the entire universe. The story is in the book, and it's a really special story, so that's important to me. But basically, this was like a couple that, a woman who came to babysit me when I was 3 weeks old, because both my parents were like very busy and traveling and things, and she came at 3 weeks and became like an adopted grandmother at one point. Her husband started coming as well, because my parents had a brother and she was older and couldn't take care of me alone. And I ended up seeing them every single day. They became like adopted grandparents from 3 weeks old to the day that he passed away. She's still alive, thank God. I talk to her every single day. Like, literally, you don't understand how lucky you are, and like how much God loves you till he sends you this couple that has no blood relation to you whatsoever and loves you like their own child, their own grandchild. So I'd say when he passed away, it was just as hard as my grandfather, who passed away later, and all these things. I never experienced that, like, it that heavily, because when you're loved unconditionally, like I was by all my grandfathers, you don't really think about it going away at some point. I think when he passed away, it hit me like I may never be loved like that again by anyone. Like, that's like the ultimate unconditional love. It's like a grandparent, especially a grandfather, granddaughter. So I'd say losing my grandfather, my adopted grandfather, like, it was just, I lost like 3 grandfathers basically, like in a span of 3 years. So that's hard. But it's like the scariest thing in the world, because when you do go through things when you're little and people are against you, whatever it is, like you said, the support system is most important. And I knew that they would just go to freaking battle for me. Like, that's like an unconditional love I genuinely don't think I'll ever see again in my lifetime. So losing that was really, really hard. Realizing that they won't, like, none of them will be at my wedding. Like, I'd say that was hard. And I'm going to lump all the grandfathers together, because their deaths were just awful. Best day of my life is hard. I don't even know. I got married like a year and a half ago, so I hope that that's in like the top 3. I don't know. I mean, meeting my husband, he thinks I'm crazy, but I think that day was more special for me than actually even getting married to him, because, and people make fun of me, but it's true. I barely spoke to him that day. I just overheard him like speaking to someone I was working with, and I came home and told my mom, like, I met the man I'm going to marry today. Like, I knew that day. So I think like that, I'd say that was more special than even marrying him. So that was a good day. Maybe it's going to sound cliche. The day my brother was born, I feel that's a good day. I didn't realize it till years later that he'd be my best friend. But I guess the day he was born is like top 3 as well. There's a lot of good days I can't
Good.
combine, so I'll lump those together.
No, that's good. That's good. Those are those. I just like to, when I ask that question, I just like to understand like what is like really, really, I guess, something that made a mark on
Yeah.
on yourself, like as you sort of went through your life. And it's, everyone has a different, sometimes it's career, sometimes it's family, a lot of the times it's family. But I like, those are good answers, and I appreciate the story about all your grandfathers. But no, it sounds like, sounds like you had an amazing, well, you do have an amazing family. It's always nice, and it's always helpful, right? You can't take that for granted. What would be one lesson that you would tell your younger self?
I'd say keep going. Like, that would be number one, because there was a lot of times, 15, 16, 17-year-old, we all deal with it as teenagers, but like, I consider my younger self, even me, like 4 months ago, like, just keep going. Like, no matter what happens, you can either shrivel up and die right there, or you can keep going, but continuing half-assed, like, that's just not going to work. So it's just keep going, because the better days are always ahead, worse days also, but you have to keep going, because it's so easy, especially for me. I deal with so much anxiety all the time. It is so easy to just like stop and like consume myself with like crazy sad thoughts and negative thoughts and everything else. It's just keep going. The world will forget what happened today. You will move on. Better things are ahead. Just always, always, always keep going.
Very good. And then last question before I get some socials and websites from you. What does success mean to you?
The age-old question. Everyone says this, and like I don't want to be a cliche, but I think it's like slowly hitting me. My whole life, it was like success is like having diplomas and degrees and awards and things to put on your wall. And I'm still that person, and I want all those things. But my husband is like slowly starting to like help me realize this. Like success is so much, not even greater. It's actually so much smaller than that. It's being able to like lay on your deathbed and be surrounded by people that love you. Because no matter how many medals you have on your wall, you don't want to surround yourself with that by yourself on your deathbed. So it's about having people around you that love you and loving yourself. Because one day you will totally be alone, closing your eyes for the last time. And if you're not okay with the life you live, that is the opposite of success. It doesn't matter how the world remembers you. If you don't like the person you are, like you're screwed. So I would say liking who you are every single night when you close your eyes, continuing the next day in the same direction, and just trying to be kind to everyone and leave the world a better place than when you came in.
Very good. And lastly, where do people find you online?
Twitter and Instagram are both just my name, Elizabeth Pipko, and then elizabethpipko.com. That's
all for today. Thanks again for joining me on another episode of the Success Story Podcast. You can download or stream this podcast wherever podcasts are available, including iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and many others. You can also watch this podcast on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe and share this podcast with your friends, family, coworkers, and peers. Please leave us a rating on iTunes. It takes about 30 seconds, as it allows other people to find our podcast and lets our amazing guests reach even more people with their message. And remember, any rating is fine as long as it contains 5 stars. I'm Scott Clary from the Success Story Podcast, signing off.